Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Joran from Joranalogue Audio Design, and this is Gregory. And we're going to give you a little overview of a new module and talk a bit about the design philosophy. And then Gregory is going to treat you to about 10 minutes of some music using my modules. So that should be very interesting. All right, so I'll just start talking about Generate 3, which, some of you may have already have seen Filter 8 last year, which is quite a popular filter module right now. I have a few of them here. And as soon as I released this module, people were asking, okay, when are you building an oscillator module? And you want a VCO? And okay. And I had been thinking about oscillator technology for a while and what I would like to see in an oscillator myself. And also about how human hearing works and what a signal is. So we have frequency, you can modulate, but timbre as well, but also phase and amplitude. So you have all these aspects. It would be really great to be able to modulate them all in the single module. So what I came up with is Generate 3, which is a true zero multiphonic signal generator, as I call it. So instead of having just frequency modulation, you can also modulate amplitude, you can modulate phase, and you can modulate the three main timbral aspects of a sound. So you can change the fundamental, the even harmonics, and the odd harmonics. So that's just a little sweep of the True Zero FM. So it has True Zero FM, which is a nice feature to make these kind of percussive or drone sounds. You can do some really deep, intense modulation, but it's not always interesting because you can clearly hear this frequency difference between the carrier and the modulator. Of course, there's two types of oscillator sync as well. So you have reset sync and flip sync. And I should mention this is a triangle core VCO at its heart. So you're hearing the triangle output, which is called core in this module. So what if I take the modulator, I take an output, and I put it into the reset sync input. Now we can create some interesting, more let's say melodic constant sound. So we're both true zero modulating and syncing from left to right. And you can, there's no longer this beating, so you can still create very deep very intense modulations, but it can be in tune, so you can have the pitch sequence going in and create some interesting stuff. So next we have the three timbral channels. So if you look at most VCO modules on the markets, you have those classic waveforms. It starts from a triangle wave or a saw wave, and then you have wave shapers to create PWM, pulse waves, and sine waves, and so on and so on. But those are actually pretty arbitrary sets of harmonics. And ultimately it's the harmonics you hear, and not just how the signal looks on an oscilloscope. So instead of those classic waveforms, here we have three timbral channels. We have the fundamental, and I'll turn it up and let you hear. And I'll remove some modulation. Okay, so the fundamental is basically the sine wave. Makes sense. Then the even harmonics. And the odd harmonics. And you can already hear the difference between the even and the odd harmonics. They have a very different character to them. And it's by combining these three parts, the fundamental, the even, and the odd harmonics, that you can dial in just about any timbre on the full output, which is the mix of the three timbral channels. So I turn it down a bit, and I take the full output. So using the knobs, I adjust the amount of fundamental, even level, odd level. You can dial in all sorts of waveforms, and it even includes the classic square wave or saw wave or anything you like, really. And of course, it also works in low frequency mode, so it can be an LFO, and you can create crazy waveforms. So I've been using these knobs to change the amplitudes. You can not just do this manually, but also under voltage control. And this is where the second type of true zero modulation comes in. That's true zero amplitude modulation, which is also known as ring modulation, four-quadrant modulation, balanced modulation. It has a lot of names. So you have this type of modulation on each of the 3 timbral channels separately. Let's listen, for example, to the, let's say, the even output. And I'll put it back into audio mode. Now I can modulate the even harmonics. So that's just the even harmonics, but now we can go back to the full outputs, and we get the even harmonics being modulated, but the fundamental and the odd harmonics stay fixed. So you can separately modulate the fundamental, even, odd, not just at audio frequencies, but also using LFOs or envelopes, lots of crazy, interesting abilities. All right, so the final type of true zero modulation we have here is the phase modulation. True zero phase modulation up to 900 degrees. A phase it's an interesting aspect of sound because you don't really hear it. So if I take the even output again, and I just phase, in any setting it sounds the same, but it's while I'm changing it, you start to hear this pitch shift. And actually the oscillator core, so I can go back to the core output, which is the core triangle. I'm changing the phase and it has zero effect, and that's because the phase is completely independent from the triangle core. So you can phase modulate the harmonics channels without actually changing the oscillator frequency. So I go back to the full outputs, or back to the even output rather. And let's do some phase modulation. So you might hear these FM kind of sounds, and this is actually how the classic digital FM synthesizers worked internally. Of course, digitally, but it's doing the same thing like this module is doing in analog. It's phase modulation. So you can experiment with both true zero frequency modulation and true zero phase modulation at the same time in a single module. Now, you of course also have oscillator sync. So let's return to the triangle core outputs. So you have the 2 types of sync: hard sync, reset sync, and soft sync, which is here called flip sync. And they have quite a different aspect, quite a different influence over the sound. So I can start with the hard sync. Those nice classic hard sync sounds. And the flip sync of course sounds a bit softer because the reset sync, it resets the triangle core to 0 from whatever point it is. So you get this harsh edge which has a lot of harmonic content. The flip sync just changes the direction. While the triangle is going, whatever point it is, it changes direction. So you don't get a sudden jump in voltage, and it sounds a bit... it sounds different. And of course you have the 2 types available at the same time, with 2 separate sockets. So you can have two different sync sources going at once. And one final trick I'll show you is to combine the True Zero FM with the resets sync, which is interesting for making more sort of tonal or constant sound. So we hear this pitch difference between the carrier and the modulator. Okay, that's nice for some percussive sounds. Let's now take the fundamental, for example, from the left one into the reset from the right one. And now it's fixed. So lots of possibilities in the single module, and that was really the goal of the design and the goal of the whole series, to rethink what analog synthesis is about, rethink those classic things we have like oscillators and filters and whatever. What are they actually? How can we make something new and give people way more modulation options than are available previously? So that's a really quick overview of Generate 3. If you'd like to see some more, try it some more, you're welcome to come over to the booth downstairs, right at the entrance. And I'll hope we meet you there. So I'm now going to give the word to Gregory, who is going to use his system, which has quite a few of the Joranalogue modules, to make some hopefully very interesting sounding music. So take it away, Greg.
Hello. Impressive. Unfortunately, I don't have the Generate 3. I think he worked very hard to finish it for Superbooth. But never mind. The setup, I'm going to explain it in short. I will use the self-oscillation of the filter rate, cross-fading with another sound source. So you get that morphing sound with the same melody that is given to them. I also use the contour that will be released soon as an oscillator, not just as a signal processor, but as an oscillator. Select and compare to are for me like compare to for sure. Swiss Army knife. It does like processing sound, but it gives also some nice tricks out that I use for the rhythms. The switch, of course, very handy to switch between signals and sound. Interesting. So let's have a test. Okay. I hope you liked it. Just check out his booth. He's going to make some terrific modules. He's a rising star. Thank you.